The first time she paid me to lie, she slid the envelope across the marble like a small white boat and said, "If my husband calls, tell him I'm here. Say I just stepped into the shower." Her voice didn't tremble. The peonies on the island didn't either. Only the air flinched, like it knew we'd just turned the house into weather. I'm Elena. I clean for a living and notice for sport. Most people think a room is quiet when no one's speaking. A housekeeper knows it's loud. Fingerprints that beg to be forgiven. Glasses that ring the counter with a memory of thirst. A chair that keeps rotating toward the kitchen island as if the room itself is trying to face me. The new client was Mrs. Danner, mid-40s, polished to an elegant hush. The house? Glassy, sunlit. Everything arranged like a mood board that married money. On the first day, she gave me a list any reasonable person would frame. Wipe, press, water the orchids, rotate the freezer stock, iron 2 ivory blouses. Then, at the bottom, in smaller handwriting, shower line. Thank you, E. I don't usually, I started. You keep houses running, she said, with that gracious, practiced smile people wear when they've learned to soft wrap a command. This is part of the house. I told her I'd answer, once per call. I wouldn't text on her behalf. I wouldn't answer follow-up questions. A lie, if I had to live with it, would be a thimble, not a bathtub. She nodded, relieved that I could be bought and still have rules. At 11:13, the husband's name lit her phone. Just an initial, M, and a lake for a contact photo. All calm water and nowhere to drown. I let it ring twice. Manners are a kind of armor. Then answered, "Is she there?" The voice was careful, like it had been sanded. "She is," I said. She just stepped into the shower. Silence waited for me to decorate it. I did not. He said, "Tell her to call me," and the call folded itself into the kitchen's hum. I pressed the blouses, steam rising like stage fog for a drama I had not auditioned for, and I told myself this was a paid draft of someone else's truth. My job was not to arbitrate, only to make the counters forget there had ever been a day. Then the house began speaking in its louder language. A second toothbrush arrived in the downstairs powder room, light blue, the kind you buy at a corner pharmacy when you've decided to stay longer than polite. Guest towels upstairs took on a cologne the master bath didn't stock. Wood, citrus, and a signature that lingered. A silk tie, wrong monogram, HL, slid out of the sofa like a secret that enjoyed the performance. In the sideboard, I found tidy weekday lunch receipts from a bistro 2 towns over. 2 mains, 1 dessert, labeled share plate. And, more damning than lipstick, the handwriting of a server who'd learned to tuck room numbers into the margins, like footnotes to a story the billing department shouldn't read. I am not a detective. I am a woman who returns a salt cellar to its exact center and knows when that center has been moved by a hand that wasn't mine. On Wednesday, she floated the second favor. "If he calls and I don't pick up," she said, laying a phone on the counter like a new plate in a place setting, "you can text him. With Elena, just showered. Call you later." "No," I said gently. "I'll speak a sentence. Once. I won't send one. A heartbeat." Then the gracious smile again, smaller. Of course. It would have been easy to hate her if she weren't so careful with the edges of her need. I stayed because I liked the work. Also because the orchids listened to me. Also because the peonies arrived every Friday and made the foyer smell like a promise. Mostly because the rule was mine and I wanted to see it hold. The affair walked in on soft shoes one Tuesday, disguised as weather. A tall man with the kind of face that wins arguments by refusing to admit they happened. He never touched a thing he didn't correct by a millimeter. A tie the color of rain before it starts. He knew my name without the step where people ask. Men like that always do. Afternoon, he said, as if the room owed him a greeting. Good afternoon, I said, as if it didn't. She'll be down, I said, keeping the sentence smaller than my patience. He leaned on the island in a way that made the marble look like a subordinate. You do fine work. Compliments like that aren't compliments. They're measuring tapes. Thank you, I said, neutral as glass. When she came in, bare feet, robe tied neatly, hair a bit too perfect for steam, they both looked staged, the world's most expensive casual. Thank you, Elena, she said, which in our new dialect meant, please become a wall. I did. Walls don't flinch. Walls also hear everything. I didn't need to hear them to understand the geometry. For 2 weeks straight, Tuesdays and Fridays ran on a clock that matched my hours. He became a schedule. The husband's calls became a metronome testing my restraint. Sometimes he tried to pry. On a Thursday, he tried again. Asked if I'd run a blouse now, as if I were a bellhop for his whims. Laundry gets done when it's in the basket, I said, not when a guest is bored. Guest, he echoed, savoring it like a garnish. He didn't leave, but he learned the taste of the word. The husband grew restless on the phone. He played 20 questions with etiquette. I've been trying to reach her, he said, as if the house could fix a marriage. I know. I'm not your assistant. I kept my tone polite enough to survive a transcript. You should talk to your wife. He was never cruel, just persistent, which can be a cruelty of its own. The day the lie moved from thimble to bucket showed up in an envelope. Lunch at Lyle's, 12:15. If he calls, she's here. Nothing more. Underneath, a softer line. Elena, don't answer if you don't want to. I wanted to. I also didn't. That's how you know a choice is honest. She left in a neat dress for a neat sin. The affair man didn't show. His part today was absence. At 12:20, the husband's name glowed on the phone with that smug lake. Is she there? She is. I added nothing. Is she in the shower? The voice was smooth but tired. I'm in the kitchen, I said. I don't share details. A pause like 2 fingers on a pulse. All right. When I hung up, she was in the doorway, hair a little winded, dressed defiantly neat, having returned from lunch that always lasted 2 hours. I kept the rules, I said. We both did, she replied. The relief in her posture looked like a coat taken off at last. Still, something had to give. The tension isn't sustainable. 3 adults using a kitchen as a courtroom, each one silently arguing for the moral high ground while I polished the judge's bench. I wrote the fix as a list. Paper has muscle when you pick the right verbs. House manual, Danner residence, access windows. During staff hours, no unannounced guests. Privacy requires rescheduling. Phone rule. Elena may answer once per call. The next Tuesday, the affair man tested a new angle. He arrived early and asked for coffee, already moving to her machine like he owned heat. He started. You'll wait, I said, keeping it civil. No guests in work zones during my hours. Since when? Since the rules. He gave me the smile designed to melt resistance and jewelry. You could make this easier on her. A text or two, a little stagecraft. I'm a housekeeper, not a prop master. I set his espresso down like a period. He swallowed the punctuation, then his pride. He left without a fight, which is unusual for a man who thinks exits are optional. He tried again 2 days later, closer this time, voice low, asking what detergent I used, then telling me he preferred a different scent. I told him I preferred empty rooms. We both learned something. I wasn't the tool he wanted to pick up. The husband tried a different pressure. Calls in clusters. 10 minutes apart, same question said 3 ways. Is she there? Yes. Is she upstairs? I don't share details. Is she avoiding me? Speak with your wife. Each time I kept my tone serene. The secret to ending dances you don't want to dance is never learning the second step. The florist delivered hyacinths with a simple card. Thought of you. M. Spring tried to make a case for itself indoors. We put the blooms in the guest room, where scent can't be mistaken for proof. They're strong, she said, touching one with a knuckle. Let them be strong where it won't be confused for an alibi. We found a strange piece after that. The manual made breaking visible. People behave better when they see their name on the rule they're about to snap. We worked side by side sometimes, she adjusting a letter tray that had nothing to do with letters. Me making coriander share space with cumin without a written apology. On good days, she ate soup at the island and asked if I thought eucalyptus or lemon made a kitchen feel cleaner. On bad ones, she sat on the floor beside the dishwasher and let the hum rub her like a cat she didn't have. I am not her friend. I am her housekeeper. But we grew a third thing between those roles. Two women managing a room so the men who kept phoning would have fewer places to hide. Then came the call that changed the weather. Not in what he said, but in how few extra words I allowed myself. Is she there? He asked. She is, I said. Is she in the shower? You should talk to your wife. Silence. Longer than before. The soft sound of a man choosing between push and pull. I've been trying, he said finally, with a tiredness that wasn't an act. Keep trying, I said, not unkind. I'm not the person who can answer that question. After that, his calls thinned. The affair man's visits didn't stop, but they lost their swagger. He learned to stay on the other side of 6 feet, to lift his hand in greeting from the doorway instead of placing it on the back of a stool where my hip might be. He learned to drink his coffee, as if heat could teach him manners. And she adjusted her life by degrees. Lyle's turned into a once-a-week myth. She returned from lunches with wind in her hair instead of perfume in her mouth. One Tuesday, she came home early, set down her handbag, and exhaled a new breath. I'm ending it, she said to the counter, then to me. Not because I'm tired of him, because I'm tired of the room he turns me into. What room? I asked, knowing the answer. The kind that needs alibis, she said. I want to be a kitchen again. Short sentences, I advised. No staging. No rearranging the salt cellar after. She laughed for real, a sound that looked good on her face. She ended it like she signs invoices, clear-eyed, even-toned, without rehearsing a single brave thing. The affair man tried 2 more calls and 1 florist delivery with a cocky little orchid. The orchid went to the guest bathroom. Orchids don't care about men. The husband called the next night. She took the call herself, in the foyer, the hyacinths in evidence, the house quiet and deciding not to care. Another night, I overheard her say in a voice that pinned down the word later so it couldn't run away and turn into never. When she returned to the kitchen, she set her phone face down and looked at the flowers. Some things return when you don't deserve it, she said, neither asking nor confessing. We'll cut the stems on a bias, I said. Help the water find them. She smiled. Do that for me too. I didn't say yes. I cut the stems. Weeks passed in house units, lists, deliveries, small adjustments that make a life. The manual got a first revision, simpler language, her voice instead of mine. On a mild Friday, the peonies arrived and did their old trick. Room as perfume. I moved them to the guest room out of habit, then moved them back to the kitchen out of something better. The house didn't need to hide anymore. It needed to smell like the thing it was. I set the salt cellar slightly off-center, my private ritual. She glanced at it and said nothing. That silence remains the kindest applause I've ever gotten. At the end of the month, she left an envelope as always, and on top a card with 10 words that made the whole season worth it. I won't ask you again. Thank you for the rules. I slid the note into my bag like a steady heart. On the bus home, the city tried on dusk and decided to keep it. In the window, I saw the reflection of a woman whose work had gotten done without turning her into proof. That's my favorite kind of clean. In my kitchen, I set a lemon on my counter a little off-center, for luck. I wrote one more line on the back of the printed manual I keep for myself. Rule 0. My presence isn't anyone's alibi. Then I put the paper away, boiled water for tea, and let the kettle make the only kind of call I still answer without rules. Some lies keep a house running, for a while. Then the line moves, and you either move it back or you become furniture in someone else's story. I'm not much for becoming. I wipe, rinse, fold, restore. I make rooms ready for the truth. If a phone rings while I'm doing that, I'll pick up once. I'll say, "She's here." And when the next question comes, the kind that tries to recruit my mouth for a role it didn't audition for, I'll use the sentence that keeps houses honest and women human. You should speak with your wife.